Welcome back to my prostate cancer recovery diary. In this episode, I'm going to talk about new data regarding exercise and cancer survival. For those of you lucky enough not to have cancer, cancer avoidance. This is of particular interest to me as I prepare for one of the bigger challenges of my life. At the end of May, I'll be attacking, health permitting, one of the world's hardest bicycle races, the 200 miles, 12,000 feet of climbing gravel race in Emporia, Kansas, called Unbound Gravel, for good reason. Let's begin with my exercise and cancer stats. There's my exercise, my Strava data, my bicycle mileage from September of 2025 to now mid-January. You can see a slow decline. I started feeling really physically fatigued, deep physical fatigue, starting in September. Despite cutting my bicycling, I still was physically fatigued. I took off about 3 weeks during vacationing in December, got back on my bicycle early January, feeling a little better. There's my cancer numbers, like PSA, prostate-specific antigen, that protein molecule on a cancerous prostate cell. You can see they're still almost perfectly inversely correlated. As my exercise decreased, my cancer marker, my PSA, increased. As most of us have known, and I've explained in prior episodes of this thrilling cancer recovery diary, researchers and medical professionals have long understood that exercise helps with cancer survival or even avoiding cancer. And the research is something like this. We study patients and we find that those with better cardiorespiratory fitness tend to survive longer, be healthier. But that's it. There's very little data about the mechanism by which exercise actually impacts cancer. Simply exercise is a vital defense or move and survive. But as of very recently, in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, as of October 7, 2025, the date when the article was accepted, recently published here in January 2026, with lead researcher Rachel Perry, we now have clear data about the mechanism by which exercise aids in cancer survival or cancer avoidance. Here is our hero of the day, Rachel Perry at Yale University, a place where I got a couple degrees and taught for a decade or so. She specializes in cellular and molecular physiology. And again, I'm going to summarize these findings from a lay perspective. I urge you to go read the full article. The article begins by summarizing the state of the known universe regarding this concept. Yes, medical professionals and researchers alike knew about the relationship between exercise and cancer survival and exercise and the avoidance or survival of other illnesses, but the mechanism by which that happened was not clear. Cue the mice and their bicycles. Well, not mice and bicycles, mice and running wheels. And this is what our heroic rodents did for us. First, they suffered the injection of some sort of substance that caused the growth of cancerous tumor. Then they were randomized into two cages. One had a free running wheel, hop in there, run to their heart's content. The other had a wheel that was locked so the mice could not get any exercise. Then they suffered the indignity of having their tumors measured to measure the growth of the tumors during this study period, and also the measurement of biometrics. As we already suspected, the mice that exercised suffered less growth of their cancers. But the researchers were able to document why and how that happened. Exercise redirects glucose to muscles instead of tumor, thereby slows tumor growth in an exercise dose-dependent manner. That is, the more you exercise, the less your tumor grows. Typically, these mice underwent 4 weeks of exercise, beginning the day of the tumor implantation, and led to a significantly smaller tumor. Concomitantly, there were reductions in tumor glucose uptake and oxidation compared to the sedentary controls. So the tumors in the exercising mice did not uptake as much glucose or suffer as much oxidation. Glucose oxidation was also increased in skeletal muscles. Mice that were exercised for 2 additional weeks before tumor implantation showed a greater reduction in tumor volume compared to sedentary control mice. Exercise works. More exercise works better. The mechanism is that the exercising muscles uptake more glucose, thereby starving the glucose from the tumor. In addition, same with oxidation, more oxidation in the muscles than in the tumor. The visuals make these findings even more dramatic. Here we can see changes in body composition. The exercising mice gained more lean mass than did the sedentary mice, and the sedentary mice gained more fat mass than the exercising mice. But let's look even more importantly at the uptake of glucose. Look what happens here. Much less glucose uptake in the tumors of the exercising mice, and much greater uptake in the chief leg muscle and the heart in the exercising mice than in the sedentary mice. As I discussed in a prior episode, researchers know that intense exercise helps more than less intense exercise, and these researchers demonstrated that. Intense exercise, acute exercise. Less intense exercise, chronic exercise. We can see that the acute exercise makes an even bigger difference, that is less uptake in the tumor, more uptake in the leg and heart muscles. Less intense exercise still, though, has positive effects, just not as dramatic. Okay, can I simplify this? Well, maybe, but I don't need to because Dr. Perry simplified this in a recent edition of the Yale Medical School's magazine. Simply put, the muscles, the working muscles, outcompete tumors for the uptake of glucose. Because muscle contraction increases glucose uptake, exercise shifts metabolism, causing tumors to receive less of the fuel they need to grow. And that shift happened even when the mice exercised modestly, that chronic exercise. Even low levels of activity were enough to produce metabolic changes in certain tumor molecules. What this means is that any amount of activity a person can manage may be beneficial. If someone's completely sedentary, simply starting to go for walks a couple times a week may have a beneficial effect. Exercise helps with cancer survival. More exercise helps more. More intense exercise helps even more. My take home? Yeah, exercise helps. But also, cancer-related fatigue is real. And our hero of the day, Dr. Perry, has also studied cancer fatigue. And this is a short quote from her most recent publication on that topic. Cancer-related fatigue, CRF, is a common and long-lasting complication in patients with cancer. So what am I doing? I'm trying to ride this balance. Exercising hard enough to keep the cancer at bay, but not so hard that I suffer this incredible fatigue. I've had extraordinary fatigue starting about 6 months ago in September of 2025. I'm trying to modulate that now, be careful with increasing my exercise in order to do a really crazy thing. And what's that crazy thing? Yes, the Unbound Gravel Race, 200 miles of rocks, dirt, and mud, and 12,000 feet of climbing. I highly recommend, if you're interested in this race, watching a recent episode, relatively recent, of GCN, the Global Cycling Network, in which one of their former pros takes on Unbound, calls it the toughest race of his life. This is the guy who's ridden the Tour de France and similar races. And how long do I have to prepare? Well, as of this typing, 132 days, 16 hours, 26 minutes, and 5 seconds. But who's counting?